Former President Trump returned to Florida to address supporters and reassess after his arraignment in New York City. Now I want to bring in CBS News political contributor Ashley Etienne and CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez. Leslie, we took a brief listen to the top of former President Trump's remarks on the really testing the question of whether it would be the Donald Trump that we've come to expect in these instances, or whether it might be a kind of speech that would operate in a different previous political world in which, with a huge spotlight of a moment, a candidate or potential candidate talks to the entire nation, frames things in a broader perspective. What we heard in reporting on what the rest of that speech was, it was essentially a list of grievances, some of it in such shorthand that even those who cover it, I mean, who knows when you talk about a FISA court, that's a very small group of people. And so I wonder what your assessment is of Donald Trump as he responds in a political fashion to this legal case, and whether he's speaking now to a very small portion even of his base in the way he's responded.
You know, it's unfortunate, I think, for many people feel all the way around. I mean, a lot of Republican strategists that are in the field in Florida today had hoped that this would be a very broad, hopeful speech about bringing the country together and dealing with the failures of the Biden administration, the contrast in terms of a policy and agenda moving forward. Everything you said, John, is exactly correct. It sounds and reverts back to what is triggering a lot of Republicans, that here we go again, is the complaining, the personal grievances, and that's a missed opportunity. But I think a lot of folks inside the campaign feel that they're designing a strategy on quicksand. So that is part of that reality, and I don't think it's going to change as long as Trump, you know, who never liked the teleprompter, never liked to listen to strategists in terms of really narrowing and defining a strong message. You can see he's not doing that today.
And Ashley, how should or how are, well, let's forget the should for the moment. How are Democrats sorting this moment politically in terms of how they think of former President Donald Trump and the Republican Party, but also what obligations, if any, Democrats feel to stand up for the rule of law and the idea that no one is above the law?
Well, I mean, here's the issue. I don't think Democrats are at all surprised by what the president said today. He's never been able to expand beyond his own interests. From day one, it's always been about Donald Trump, never about the interest of the country, never about the American people, what's in their best interest. It's always been about Donald Trump. And that's what we saw again today. I mean, he continues to live in this alternate universe driven by alternative facts, where he remains the victim in it all. And I think that's unfortunate. But, from a Democratic perspective, we've always stood up for the rule of law. I mean, I remember I ran the impeachment war room, the first impeachment war room, and we were thinking through what are the messages and how are we going to characterize this to the American public in a way that they could actually wrap their heads around it. And interestingly enough, we use the same phrasing that the district attorney used today, which is a scheme and a pressure campaign, all to supply and further Trump's interest rather than that of the nation. So we've always been advocating for the rule of law as it relates to Donald Trump.
Ashley, let me just ask you quickly. When it was congressional Democrats running the impeachment, that made some sense because there's a political connection between impeachment. In this case, with the Manhattan DA, is it politically wise or not for, say, Chuck Schumer to weigh in and say the law must be upheld, or for any other Democrat, when there's not that necessary connection that there was in the impeachment context?
No, I think it's always appropriate for Democrats and Republicans. In fact, I mean, that's the real question. Why are they so silent when it comes to the issue of the rule of law? But we should all be standing up for the rule of law. That's what this boils down to. It's not about Donald Trump. It is about these principles that our nation are founded on, which is no one's above the law. Everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. So no, I think it's always appropriate for Democrats and even Republicans to weigh in on this. I think, what you're saying from the president, I would advise him to continue to do, which is to let this narrative play out. Don't get involved in it at all. This is going in your direction. Don't run interference on it.
And Leslie, let me ask you very quickly, Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney, no fans of the president, nevertheless have said this is a political investigation. I wonder what you make of that, which is Donald Trump seems to have brought the party together, at least in that way, maybe through nothing he said, but at least through what's being done to him or perceived being done to him by other members of his party.
100%, John. That's exactly the biggest point of the day. The one thing that did come out of all of this is you have a lot of individuals, including folks that fell into the never Trump category, who are now looking and coalescing around the president because of this issue of rule of law, because Republicans have quickly come together to say this is a mockery of the rule of law. This is personal persecution. This is a farce. This is demeaning. And in so many ways, they feel that there was one person called it a nothing burger, that there really wasn't a lot there. And because of that, and I'll just real quickly point to, we talked about the first impeachment. That was the challenge with the first impeachment. There was probably more merit in the second impeachment because so much went into it and it looked so highly politicized that Republicans all came together against, the Democrats in opposition. And again, in a highly polarized sense, it leaves a lot of voters wondering how to parse the truth here, because everyone has taken sides. Right. And I think we're right back where we started.
All right, Leslie Sanchez and Ashley Etienne, thank you both for joining me. Really appreciate it.